Hello and welcome. We hope that you're doing well, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar on Monarca Minerals. As always, my name is Jacob Willoughby, and I'm a Vice President of Research and an Analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Joining me remotely today are Carlos Espinoza and Mike Smith. Carlos is CEO, and Mike is Executive Vice President of Exploration and the qualified person of Monarca Minerals. We'll begin today's webinar with a presentation on the company by Carlos and Mike, followed by a question and answer period. As a reminder, you can type in your questions at any time, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. But before we begin, I'd like to note that there may be some forward-looking statements made in this webinar, and I would direct listeners to the cautionary notes on page 2 of Monarca Minerals' corporate presentation, located on their website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. Also, we note that this webinar does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Company-specific disclosures for Red Cloud are the following. In the last 12 months preceding the date of issuance of the research report or recommendation, Red Cloud Securities Incorporated has performed investment banking services and has been retained under a service or advisory agreement by the issuer. In the last 12 months, a partner, director, or officer of Red Cloud Securities Incorporated or the analyst involved in the preparation of the research report has received compensation for investment banking services from the issuer. And also the analyst at Red Cloud personally has a long position in the issuer. And now I'm very happy to introduce to you Carlos Espinoza, CEO, and Mike Smith, Executive Vice President of Exploration and qualified person at Monarca Minerals.
Excellent, Jacob. Thank you very much for organizing this seminar or webinar, and thank you everybody for attending this afternoon. I'm Carlos Espinosa. I'm glad to be here with you today. We're going to talk about Monarca, what have been done in the last few months and weeks together with Mike. So I'm going to jump. We have our forward-looking statement, just as Jacob mentioned, but I'm going to start talking about, I'll give you an overview about the company. Canadian company with assets in Mexico. We have 3 excellent assets, 2 of them in Durango State, the other one in Chihuahua State. Both states are pro-mining. San Jose is the first one of these projects we have in Chihuahua. It's a project with a great potential, and I'm not going to talk about the details because Mike is going to walk you through all these details. I just want to give you an idea of our assets. We have also Tahaman and San Lucas in the state of Durango, also with a lot of potential. Good work we have been doing there, and we are planning to do some expansion of the portfolio. It's important to mention that Mike is today with us because he's our Executive VP of Exploration, QP, but also it's very important to highlight his experience. He has more than 40 years of experience working in different countries. He has been working with great companies such as Barrick Gold or Continental Gold, and he's been working in Mexico, he's been working in Colombia, he's been working in other places in the US, and he has been working with us for the last probably 9 years, doing an excellent job. So it's a great asset. He knows very well the projects and he knows very well the country. So it's a great value to the company. Just talking very quick about the capital structure. Some of you are aware that recently we closed a financing. We did a private placement that initially was planned for $2 million, and the market had a great response. So we increased the private placement to $3 million. We closed it at $3 million, even though still some investors want to participate. We decided that was enough at that moment. Also, the market responded very well. The volume increased and the share performance just jumped from 5 cents to 15 cents, even 18 cents some days. Today we are around 15 cents. So we have close to 200 million shares, around 17 million market cap, and the main shareholders are Palisades Gold Corp with 8%, and Eric Sprott with close to 3%. Eric had been with us since probably 4 years ago or so. Very, very supportive. And Palisades is the first time joining us, and hopefully they're going to continue participating with us. It has been a very good start of as a relationship. In terms of the management and board, I don't want to spend too much time. I just want to highlight on top of the Mike experience, we have some other team members highly experienced, including Carlos Pacheco, who is a country manager, Mexican fellow with plus 25 years of experience in Mexico, Mexican guy based in Mexico. He knows very well the country. So we really have our foot in Mexico, developing our assets. We have our office in Durango City, and we moved from there. Also, recently, I want to mention Monica Ospina joined the company as a member of the board. She has a great experience on the CSR. She has been doing a lot of work in community relations in Ecuador, in Mexico, some other countries like Peru as well, or Colombia. So she's working together with us, also helping us to implement the best practice in terms of community relations. So we are having a good balance between lawyers, financial people, but also technical and CSR experience on the management. I'm probably going to stop here and pass the microphone to Mike, who really is going to talk to you about Tahaman, San Jose, and San Lucas, and then I'm going to wrap up. So, Mike, I stop here and pass the microphone to you. Mike, I think you're still in mute.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. So we have three projects in Mexico. The number one main project that we have is the San Jose project, which is in northern Chihuahua, only about 30 kilometers south of the border with New Mexico. It's a easy place to work. It's an easy terrain to work in. We have an excellent relationship with the community there. It's approximately 6,000 hectare property. The current indications are polymetallic skarn and porphyry potential with significant precious metal grades at surface. So we're seeing indications of a significant mineral system there. It's a project that we've only had in the portfolio for about 2 years. It's a recent addition. It's something that we looked at about 5 years initially, and I was very impressed with the potential. And I'll get into more details about what we've discovered there with the geophysical work that's been done. We also have two other projects, the Tahaman project and the San Lucas project. They've been in the portfolio of the company for about 10 years. They're properties that are located in central Mexico, respectively about 2 hours and an hour and a half northwest of the capital city of Durango. It's easy terrain to work in. The capital city is a beautiful city of about 500,000 people, and we have excellent paved road access to both of the properties. The Tahaman project is about 1,700 hectares. It's a project that has a current 43101 resource of about 29 million ounces of silver at 45 grams per ton silver. It's an epithermal vein system with large area of Montos-style mineralization. So there's significant resource that's already been established there with drilling that was done in the period of 2004 to 2007. And the San Lucas project is nearby. It's a smaller land position. We're in the process of discussions with owners of the single owner of the surrounding claims to expand the land position to have a significant footprint there. And it's in elephant country. It's only 4 kilometers away from Argonaut Gold's San Agustin mine, which is in construction. It's a gold property. We have significant gold values, silver values, and base metal values on our property. Next slide, please. So the San Jose project, as I mentioned, is in northwestern Chihuahua, Mexico, very close to the border with the U.S. Strategically, it's located only about 50 kilometers away from an operating base metal silver mine that Peñoles has had into production now since the 1990s. That's the Bismarck mine, and it's really our exploration model. We're seeing very similar mineralization at the surface to the Bismarck mine, which is very close to us, and it's in a trend of significant base metal and silver and gold deposits striking northwesterly from the eastern portion of Chihuahua, the state of Chihuahua, Mexico, all the way into New Mexico, where there are porphyry copper deposits that have been in operation since the early 1900s. The access to San Jose is very easy. You can fly into El Paso or Juarez, Mexico, and it's a paved road access about 2 hours to the west of Juarez, Mexico. It's in an area that's very easy terrain. It's flat terrain pretty much. There are some hilly areas, but it's not very steep mountainous terrain like in the Sierra Madre. So the logistical aspects of being there are excellent. In 2019, we entered into an agreement to acquire 100% interest in the project for total cash payments of $150,000. The owners have retained a 2% royalty, which we can buy half of for $100,000 once we might get into production. So we see significant base metal mineralization along with some very high-grade gold and silver assays at surface. The mineralization is associated with skarns that are related to a mineralizing intrusive that's been detected by mapping at the surface as well as the geophysics. And so we have a classic scenario there where we have geophysics indicating a mineralizing intrusive and then skarn mineralization around that with some very high-grade assays. The area had very minimal amount of production in the 1970s, just from a couple of shallow shafts and pits. The reported grades were very high, 50 to 1,000 gram per ton silver, 1.5 gram per ton gold, along with 6% lead. And we also see copper and zinc mineralization associated with that. So it's very similar in many ways to the Bismarck mine. And we see current indications at the surface based on the sampling that we've done that we've got significant precious metal grades associated with the skarn mineralization that we see. So it's a little bit distinct from Bismarck in that we have much higher gold and silver grades at surface, and that's basically because we're up higher in the mineralizing system. And compared to Bismarck, where the mineralization is adjacent to an intrusive, we have that, but we also have mineralization sitting on top of the intrusive, and that's a typical environment where you get higher precious metal grades. No drilling has ever been done on the property. It's to a certain degree a grassroots discovery in that the previous people that have looked at the property didn't recognize the mineral potential. But with 40 years of experience in skarn and porphyry systems, I saw clearly the indications of a much larger system at depth, which has been validated now by the geophysics. So based on the work we did at the surface, we did a geophysical program, and I'll get a little bit further into the presentation about the very positive results of that. Based on the geophysics that's been done, we've got very strong IP anomalies indicating sulfide mineralization. And so we have a drilling program from 5 to 10,000 meters of drilling from surface, where we would be focusing on the IP anomalies, which are indicating likely sulfide mineralization at depth. Next slide. This slide is just to give you a better idea of the mineralization. On the right-hand side is a cross-section through the Bismarck deposit that Peñoles discovered in the early 1990s. They saw mineralization at the surface, very similar to what we see at the San Jose project. And you can see in this cross-section that the mineralization at the surface, the upper portion of the image, was very minimal, just thin skarn veins, thin veins of mineralization. They implemented a geophysical survey doing mag work as well as IP, and they discovered significant IP anomalies at depth, drilled those, and discovered an initial resource of 13 million tons of 52 gram per ton silver and 11% zinc. That works out to about 350 gram per ton silver equivalent. So the IP anomalies are really the key to what we have at the San Jose project associated with the mag anomalies. The mineralization is hosted in both the intrusives, the mineralizing intrusives, as well as the limestones in the area. We do see in the southwestern portion of the area that we've looked at, we've only looked at about 5 to 10% of the area, the land position that we have. And so we see clear indications of mineralization extending to the southeast from the area where the geophysical discovery occurs. So we have mineralization hosted in the intrusive as well as in the limestones. And something that's really key is that we see late overprinting hydrous retrograde mineralization. That's basically quartz and clay veins superimposed on top of the skarns, which indicates a larger mineral system at depth, and the kind of grades that we see with the silver and gold at the surface is indicating significant mineralization. In effect, you can consider it to be leakage of something much larger at depth, leaking to the surface in vein systems that are overprinting the areas of skarn mineralization. Next slide. This slide gives us an idea of the geophysics. The land position is on the right-hand side. You can see the large concession block that we have approaching 6,000 hectares. The geophysics was done in the oval area that's indicated, where we've done the initial surface sampling as well as the geophysical work. The initial surface sampling was done about 2 years ago. We took 167 chip channel samples across the areas of mineralization, and we found grades up to 9.5 gram per ton gold at the surface and up to 257 gram per ton silver at the surface, along with base metal grades that are associated with the mineralization. So the geophysical results, and we'll start with the two colorful images down in the lower left-hand corner. The right-hand image is the magnetics, and what that's indicating is in areas where we have what we believe are the main mineralizing intrusive bodies. There's a larger anomaly, and those are the bright red and pink colors in the lower left-hand corner, the southwestern corner of the area of the geophysics that was done, which covered an area of about 800 hectares. And so that image is telling us where there are buried intrusives. And very importantly, if you look at the next slide to the left, those are the results of the IP survey. And we see very strong IP anomalies over both of the intrusive bodies. And the IP anomaly is extensive. It's the largest and most intense I've seen in 40 years in the mining business, where we have very strong indications of sulfide mineralization. And the IP anomaly indicating the sulfide mineralization is approaching 3 kilometers in strike length, and it extends to the southeast off the area of the geophysics. So we have a lot of open ground to the southeast of the main mineralization that we've discovered so far based on the geophysics, and it extends to the southeast, and we see areas of mineralization to the southeast, in particular dolomitic alteration, which is associated commonly with very large porphyry related systems. So the geophysics is really the key, and the drilling program we have is going to be focusing on the IP anomalies indicating sulfides at depth. And the depth of penetration for the geophysical survey was about 450 meters, but we see mineralization, the IP anomalies extending to within 100 meters of the surface. So we believe that we have significant sulfide mineralization, and the metal grades we see at the surface, both the metal grades and the precious metal grades, makes us very optimistic and positive of success when we get started with the drilling program, which hopefully we can start towards the end of this year and early next year. We have to go through the permitting process. We've had discussions with the local ejido and community. We have verbal agreements with them to do to permit the drilling. Those documents are being formalized now. They get signed in front of the Reforma Agraria, where they verify and witness that everybody's in agreement on the use of the land. Right now, we're allocating about 100 hectares of land, which overlie the areas of the most significant geophysical-based anomalies that we have on the ground. And the cost is very reasonable. It's basically 500 pesos per hectare per year. So that's about, through the exploration phase, a cost of only $2,500 per year to be able to use the surface. And so those agreements are being formalized. As soon as they're formalized and registered with the Ministry of the Agriculture, the Reforma Agraria, then we can move forward with the drilling permitting, which should take about a month or so. And so things are well in progress to initiate drilling and follow up on these very encouraging geophysical anomalies that we have. Next slide, please. The Tahaman project is located, as I mentioned, in Durango, Mexico. It's easy to access. It's about a 2-hour drive northwest of the capital of the state of Durango. We have about 1,700 hectares of land position there, and it's 100% owned asset. It's located about 10 kilometers away from a nearby town of 30 or 40,000 people of Nuevo Ideal, and then it's maintained gravel road to get to the work area. And it's an area with a lot of development. It's a big agricultural area. The valleys to the 10 miles to the east of us are significant in terms of agricultural production. And we have 2 discrete deposits at the Tahaman. One is Los Mantos and the other is Cerro Prieto. And we see significant mineralization there. And the resource that we have based on the drilling that was done in the 2004 to 2007 timeframe is 20 million tons at 45 grams per ton gold, for a total resource of 29 million ounces. That may not sound like a very high grade, but we do have very high grade mineralization on the property. We have discovered that there are significant 4 or 5, half a dozen or so high-grade feeder veins that are striking northeasterly, and in some of those feeder veins which feed into the mineralization that's very shallow, which is what's been drilled to date. The drilling only went to a depth of about 200 meters because at the time there was focus on open pit mining potential, and the idea was something that where open pit mining would be viable, even at the grades that we see here, 45 grams per ton. The comparative deposit is Coeur's Rochester mine in central Nevada, where they're open pit mining and heap leaching silver mineralization. And the average grade of what they put on their leach pads is about 20 grams per ton. So there's significant mineralization for shallow, open pitable, heap leachable mineralization. But the current focus is following up on these high grade feeder veins, an example of which is in the last bullet point on the left-hand side of this slide, where we have intercepts up to 6 meters grading 1,400 grams per ton silver with about 5% combined lead zinc. So where these high-grade feeder veins are coming up into shallow positions in the Los Mantos and Cerro Prieto deposit, there's significant lower grade mineralization, but high-grade feeder veins, especially where they come into the volcanic section, drilling and targeting those high-grade feeder veins where they go into the base of the volcanic section, we see significant potential for Manto-style mineralization, where we have ponding of the mineralizing fluids underneath the volcanic rocks, and we have are very optimistic that we have significant mineralization in those veins themselves, but also where those veins feed into the bottom of the volcanic section. We could have significant thick and high-grade Manto-style deposits. Next slide. So we have a summary here. The upper right-hand corner, you can see an image of where the drilling was done. All the little dots you see are defining both the Los Mantos deposit and the Tahaman project. The Cerro Prieto portion of the Tahaman project. Then drilling was all very shallow, and what we want to do is follow up at depth. So crossing through the Los Mantos deposit and the Cerro Prieto deposit, we have northeasterly striking high-angle mineralized feeder veins. The kind of intercepts you see in the mineralization that's both shallow as well as in the feeder veins in the lower left-hand corner is you can see significant grades and thicknesses that were drilled. So what we're moving to do is we've finished relogging all of the drill cuttings and core that we have available for the project, and are putting together a new interpretation to focus the drilling, so that when we do drilling, which would be follow-up core drilling, we would be drilling through and confirming the shallower mineralization, but also targeting those holes to hit the high-grade feeder veins at depth, which have never been drilled. So we see significant potential there. The work that was done historically, as I mentioned, was largely focused on the very shallow mineralization. The drilling that's been historically done is a maximum of about 200 meters of depth, and because the understanding was that we would have something like the Rochester mine in central Nevada, metallurgical testing was done, and we see good recoveries in the mineralization that was tested, both in bottle roll testing, cyanide amenability testing, as well as column leach testing, with recoveries depending on the sample typically in the 60-70% range, which is pretty typical of the mineralization that we see. The reason that we have such good recovery with cyanidation is that all of the silver is tied up with the canthite, which is soluble in cyanide solution. So all of the work that's been done historically there is very positive. There's a resource, and we think there's significant potential for very high-grade mineralization feeding into the known resource as well as below the known resources. So we hope to be able to follow up there in 2021 and be able to drill some of these high-grade feeder veins and further verify the shallower resource that we have in place. Next slide. This is about the San Lucas project. I think one of the key things, I mentioned it before, is it's very close to Argonaut Gold's San Agustin mine. If you stand on the ridge line where mineralization is at the surface at the San Lucas project, you can see the mine visually just on another ridge line about 4 kilometers to the north of us. So we have a significant area of mineralization, and we did some additional sampling at the surface that had not been historically done, and we found some significant areas of mineralization in what we call the doctor zone, El Doctor zone. And we see gold grades up to 110 grams per ton gold at the surface. And based on the sampling that we did, we have, throwing out the really high-grade gold value, we have an average based on the samples that were taken of about 3 grams per ton gold at the surface associated with significant silver mineralization. It's in 2 silicified shear zones that are parallel to each other. They're high angle, and we see significant mineralization there. A few drill holes have been drilled in this area with the best intercept of 2 meters of 147 grams per ton silver and about 2% combined lead zinc. So the area is an area of very strong mineralization. There's a significant block of land around us that we're in discussions with the owner of to be able to consolidate that land position to give us a bigger footprint on the ground. But we see very strong mineralization at the surface, and we want to follow that up with additional work, primarily drilling and expanding the land package there. It's a very easy area to get to. It's only about 90 kilometers north of the capital city of Durango, and so the main paved road going northwesterly out of Durango goes right through the property. So this, like at the Tahaman project and the San Jose project, we have excellent infrastructure, good access, and in San Lucas we have an excellent relationship with the community, and so we hope to move that project forward as fast as possible. But our current focus is really just because of it's very easy to get to. It's something that is got very strong mineralization at the surface. Our short-term focus is the San Jose project, but we'll be moving into and doing additional work in San Lucas and Tahaman early next year. We've started some of that work, but we've got 3 excellent projects in Mexico that we're moving forward to develop, primarily with drilling programs, and we're very optimistic about success in all 3 of the project areas that we have. And I think the next slide, we hand it back to Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you very much, Mike. Yeah, I want to share this slide with you, talking about a comparable analysis with some other exploration companies that are working in the Americas and are also working on silver. You could see Monarca is still well undervalued compared to most of our peers, and probably one of the reasons is because we have been working behind the scenes for a while. We didn't talk too much to the market in the past. Monarca had issues years back during the downturn, so the current team, the current management, the current board spent a lot of time fixing the issues that the company had in the past. We got focused on acquiring as well a new asset, which is San Jose, and now we came back to the market with a plan and the next steps for the future. So What we see here is a lot of room to growth, a good opportunities for investors to grow with the company. So I'm very positive about the future of the company, and I'm glad the investors that are joining us on this ride. Um, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are, as a part of the strategy, we are focused also on building a strong base of social management, focus on the three projects and tailoring the strategy on each project as we need it. For now, San Jose, which is the project with more activity, and we are moving forward on the drilling program. We are working on the community engagement, and what we are planning to do, or what we are doing, is to really work together with the community, get them involved in the project, and get their full support for the next steps. Tahaman, it's more complicated, so we're going to spend more time on the risk assessment and community engagement. And as Mike mentioned, we have a lot of potential. We want to do a new drilling program there, but we need to first be sure that the community is totally on board with us. And San Lucas is, at this point, is an early engagement because it's a small property that we want to expand. The land package plan to expand the property, it's in place. And as soon as we have a better position in the region, we want to start also moving forward with the community. Sometimes, and the question for everybody is, why invest in Monarca, or why invest in any company, right? Talking specifically about the opportunities here, we have around the corner this drilling program for San Jose, where we identified very good targets. We are planning to do something between 5 to 10,000 meters drilling to basically prove the thesis from Mike and the results from the geophysics to see what's the big potential on this asset. So we are excited, and I'm sure as soon as we start getting results, we will be glad to come back to the market and share with all of you. We have a good portfolio of high prospective gold and silver assets in Mexico. We are looking for new investment opportunities as well. We have a couple of potential opportunities that we cannot talk much at this point, unfortunately. But we are constantly reviewing opportunities, and as soon as we get a new good opportunity, we will take it for sure. And as I mentioned earlier, we are still undervaluated, despite the big jump the share did during our private placement from 5 to 15 cents. Still very, very undervaluated compared to the assets that we have and the potential that we have. So I believe this is a company that's going to continue growing and bringing new stories to the market. And with this one, I want to close the formal presentation and open the floor for some questions that you might have for Mike or myself.
Thank you both for that. That was very informative. So we'll get to some questions now. The first question from a participant was asking sort of why San Jose had not been drilled in the past. And I think I have an idea why the answer is, but I'll let one of you answer that one.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. You know, when I first looked at the property 5 years ago, there was a report that was had been done by a Mexican geologist. He looked at it. A few other people looked at the property. Peñoles looked at the property, and in fact, they wanted to acquire the property, but we kind of got it out from underneath them. The owners didn't want to do business with Peñoles for whatever reason. When I went there and looked at it, I recognized that it was, you know, extremely good potential that people had just walked by. You know, some people have looked at it, but they never really understood what they were seeing. But the surface expression of the mineralization told me that there was significant mineral potential at depth that had never been drilled. And we verified that potential with the geophysics. So people looked at it and they just didn't quite maybe have the right experience to really recognize and understand what it was that they were seeing.
Right. Okay, kind of a financial question here. One of our participants asking, what is the company's cash position and burn rate? Generally?
Yeah, it's excellent questions. Our current cash position is around $2.3 million, and burn rate, it's as of today, it's below $50,000. We're going to increase this rate as soon as we start drilling, but still, we are considering a budget for around $500,000 for the initial drilling program. On the drilling program, Mike, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's going to be from, let's say, December to the first couple of months of 2021, right? So it's
Yeah,
that
that's
big
about
right
right.
now.
And yeah, and our approach will be to do an initial program of something around 5,000 meters, and then understand the results. You know, get the assays in, interpret the geology, and figure out the best way to follow up. So it's going to be a phased program because there's no historic drilling there. We need subsurface information beyond the geophysics, hard measurements with drilling, assay values, understand the geology. We'll put together the geology and do follow-up drilling as justified by the results of the first pass.
Yeah. Also, I want to mention, as a junior company, we need to be very, very careful on how do you spend the money. So we don't have a fancy office in Toronto. We use our lawyer's office as an official office. And in Mexico, I mentioned we had an office in Durango City. We rent a house. All the main floor for the house is the office. On the second floor of the house, we have all the bedrooms ready for the people who are traveling to Mexico to work, either geologists, myself, Mike, and so on. And same thing we did in San Jose. We rent a couple of small houses that are very, very cheap there because it's just a small community. But that's some of the way to save money and really try to put as much money as we can in the ground. That's the main goal.
And I think to add to that, another thing I think is important, Carlos, is how we present ourselves in the community. We're neighbors. We rent a house. There's next door neighbors. We painted the houses to make them look nice. We're being responsible. We engage with the local community. We're not separating ourselves from the community. We're part of the community, and that's a really essential thing to do in any project anywhere in the world. But in Mexico, you have to make sure you're integrated with the community so you don't develop problems with the community. We're neighbors.
Right. And just to clarify, Carlos, you said 50,000. That's a monthly burn rate?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. There's a question from a participant asking if your ultimate goal is to develop mines or focus more on exploration.
That's a very good question. And probably if we ask to Mike, he's gone all the way to build a mine. But
yep. I'm a miner. I mean, I've been in operations for decades, and everything from exploration to development to operations and reclamation aspects of mining projects. So yeah, I'm a miner. I want to mine something that we find.
Yeah, that's really the ultimate target.
Okay. Maybe so. You said the timing on the permits is about a month, and then it would take a little bit of time to get mobilized. October starts tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, potentially sort of mid-November, you could start drilling. Is that sort of fair?
I think that's a little bit too fast, just because one of the issues that we do have is in order to register the agreements with the community as well as to get the permitting is that you go through Mexican government agencies, and most of those are shut down till October 15th. So we're doing all the legwork in advance to move as quickly as possible through that permitting process. So I think the best case scenario is December.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, still a lot of offices in Mexico are closed because of the COVID.
Yeah.
So we prepare, not formal, but we negotiate everything, but we need to formalize before the authorities.
Mm-hmm. And your 5,000 meters at San Jose, this is the first drill program there. So I imagine you're thinking a larger number of shallower holes to get as much information as possible, and maybe one or two deeper ones. Is that sort of the strategy?
Yeah, we're finalizing the drilling plan right now. One of the things that really helps us is the geophysics indicates that the sulfide mineralization is fairly close to the surface in places. So the holes will vary from maybe 150, 200 meters deep at the shallowest to up to 400 or 500 meters. And so we're finalizing that because the geophysics is clearly indicating significant depth extension, but in some places it's very shallow. So yeah, it's going to be a mix of deeper and shallower. We're likely going to be drilling reverse circulation drilling, which is great for first pass drilling. But it depends on the price per meter for drilling. We're going to be taking a look at how we want to drill that. If the prices are better with core, we might drill core. But the idea basically is to have a combination of holes. Each hole is specific to what the geology and the geophysics is telling us about what the target really looks like. So all of it's being put together in cross sections in advance. Have the discussion between the geologists. What should we do? What should we not do? What's the priority? But with the first pass drilling, because there's no historical drilling, there's a lot of information to assimilate in terms of putting together a geological interpretation.
Yeah, the initial geophysics was with a deep close to 500 meters, if I'm right, Mike.
Yeah.
And so this initial planning is based on that information. So it's going to be something between 200 meters, 500 meters.
Yeah.
Okay, and so imagine if you get started sort of beginning of December, the program could wrap up before the holidays, and then so I'm wondering, are there targets that you might consider going to drill at Tahaman to look for some of those feeder pipes, or do you want to hold off on that to do a little bit more analysis at this time?
No, well, I think Tahaman is going to take more time to get ready for drilling. I expecting to have Tahaman ready for drilling probably second half next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think it'd be a similar sort of 5,000 meter program, or?
Yeah, it'd be something similar. The first, it's very much like San Jose in that we have a pretty clear picture about where some of these high grade feeder veins are, but still we've got to look at them in more detail. As I mentioned, we've re-logged the cuttings and have started the interpretation about where we target those holes. So we're looking at probably one to 2 months worth of work doing analysis of the existing information, because when you're spending money on drilling, you want to make sure you get all the bang for the buck you can. So we want to make sure we have clear and concise targets that are reasonable in depth and have the best optimization for success. Right.
There's a question from a participant wondering when the next financing might be on the books for the company, but I think that's definitely into the next year.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we internally discuss a lot about it. I believe it's something around March, around PDAC, based on one side, the initial results we had for San Jose and the plans for the next steps. So we will have a better or a clear idea about the needs for the company. Also, I hope between now and then we want to have a better clarity on the potential acquisition. So that's another good point to consider, and the need for capital for that acquisitions if that's happening. So we don't have a clear date, but my guess is around March next year.
Okay. Common question for companies operating in Mexico. What are your concerns in terms of safety? How are the areas that you're working in that regard?
You want to talk, Mike, or should I take it?
Go ahead. I'll add on to what
Okay.
you might comment about.
Excellent, excellent. We are very fortunate to be in Durango and Chihuahua. The two assets that we have in Durango are not on the Sierra, so it's both of them are in areas more rural and quiet. We don't have any issues. The community know about us, so we feel comfortable. We travel, myself or Mike or the local team travel to the community with no issues at all. In Chihuahua, we are almost on the border with the U.S., probably 150 kilometers west of Ciudad Juarez. Ciudad Juarez, we all know, is a complicated city, but we are far enough in a very rural area with nothing really happening. It's agricultural community, so we are welcome there, and nothing is happening. Not the bad guys are around, so it's we feel very comfortable going back and forth with at any point.
Yeah, and I think I'll add to that a bit is one of the key things. Any place that I worked in, Mexico and Colombia and Peru and Ecuador and other places before that, is you have a relationship with the community. You always establish a relationship first, and your best defense with problems is knowing people in the community. Before you go there, you call up your friends, you find out what's going on, and so you're part of the community. And so your best warning system, if you will, are the people that live in the community. They know what's going on, and I've experienced a situation in Colombia and other projects in Mexico where at some particular point in time we decided not to go. It just wasn't worth the risk. There was too much activity, too many problems going on. So the key to operating safely in Mexico is knowing the community and being neighbors with the community, and they keep you informed about what's happening.
Right. Yeah. I mean, myself, I've been to both Chihuahua and Durango many times, and although they're not vacation hotspots for most North Americans, they're places you certainly go to in the mining industry, and I've always felt very comfortable in both of those places myself. Yep. And Carlos, of course, being originally from Mexico. And Mike, I know you've spent an enormous amount of time in Mexico in your working days.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And so, again, the key is there are certain places where you don't go, and there are certain times you don't go. But, we've got a good handle on that. We've never, had a serious problem. We always had a clear picture of what we were getting into in advance. And there are projects that I've turned down because it wasn't a safe area. So we're very much in touch with operating safely. If I send a crew geologist out to an area, I make very sure that it's a safe area to work in, and we have people that go in advance, get to know the community, talk to the community, and so it's something where I've walked from projects because they weren't safe, and that certainly isn't the case with any of these projects that we've got.
That's great. That covers off, I think, most of the questions we had participants, and also a couple from myself. So I'd like to thank both Carlos and Mike very much for making themselves available for this, especially Mike while he's on the road, still making himself available. And I'd like to, of course, thank all the participants online. Our next webinar for Red Cloud will be next week, and we hope to be able to announce exactly when that will be and who it will be with tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. And with that, we'll close off once again. Thanks very much to everybody. And
thank you.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you very much.
Look very much forward to seeing the results coming in the near term.
Great.
Thank you
very much.
Afternoon.